My name is Erika Bradberry, and I came to downtown from Echo Park. And I moved down here with my parents in 1982 to the Citizens Warehouse building. My mom always wanted to live in a loft, so that's where we ended up. My mom was an actress and did a lot of theater, and still is, actually, not was, and my stepfather was a musician, and they wanted to have performances in their space in this kind of burgeoning art community. I was 18, so it was a really fun time to come down here. It really felt like there was a lot of freedom down here. In the weekends, it was like free reign. You could do whatever you wanted. There were no cops, and being a young person in that environment was really great. People would have concerts outside, film showings, all kinds of stuff. And on Sundays, we just kind of owned the neighborhood. That's what it felt like to be 20, 21, 22 down here. Al's Bar. I was about 20, turning 21, that I kind of became aware of this community. By that time, I had moved to Skid Row. I was over on Winston Street, 5th in Los Angeles, and I was doing a lot of theater down here. And it was because of cast parties that I started coming over here to the bar. And I was a little too young to get in the bar, but I got in a few times anyway. There were lines around the block, I think, in those days. It sure seemed that way. A lot of amazing bands came through Al's Bar in the early days, and I got good and drunk there many, many times and did a number of other things in the bathroom. But it was just like a wonderful, free, fun place. There was graffiti all over the place. People were playing pool. All kinds of colorful people. Sean Penn coming to the bar while they were shooting colors, and we were going to all come down and try to take pictures of them to incite a riot. USC students pulling up and peeing on the side of the building. Pool tournaments, theater events, poetry, all kinds of stuff. I think I kind of grew up in Al's Bar. It was the first bar that I really went to regularly when I was 21. 96 Tears was always on that jukebox, and to this day, whenever I hear that song, I think about Al's Bar.
Too many teardrops for one heart to be crying.
The first theater I worked at down here was the Night House. I lit 3 or 4 shows there, and then there was another theater close by on Wallenboyd called the Wallenboyd, and I did a number of plays there, the first of which were with the Actors Gang, Tim Robbins' theater company. I think I did 2 plays with them. I ran lights and technical theater for a lot of the performances at Lace. And then from that I got over here to Al's. I ran some lights for some different productions that we did there, which in the bar consisted of clip lights with gels on them. I mean, we didn't have any real lights, and a weird little light board, that had dimmers, like household dimmers. It was really fun to be in the booth doing that. I did the lights for Loft Maiden, which was out in the parking lot. It was a musical about living in a loft, which was really wild. The Jukebox Never Plays a Song You Want to Hear, which was Al's Bar version of A Midsummer Night's Dream that they did in the bar. Dominique Lowell directed it. But I remember the last thing I did at Al's Bar was a Charles Bukowski piece that my mother was in, and I came and ran the lights, and that was probably 1995, and that was like the last thing I did here. But a lot of serious theater and music and performance going on downtown at that time. I came up here from the bar to Don Jones' place with a group of people. The bar had closed and we wanted to keep partying. He had one of the bigger places in the hotel at that time. A lot of us would come up to his place after going out somewhere and continue the party for the next day or 2 or 3. Sometimes we'd stay there, and sometimes we'd go somewhere else and come back. There was always an abundance of stuff going around, be it alcohol or whatever. It was really pretty crazy here in '87. There were a lot of people living up here. The lights were on 24/7. People weren't really sleeping, running from room to room. It was pretty happening up here. Different rooms, and people were playing live music or painting or all kinds of partying and stuff going on. And it was really fun to be 21, 22, 23 years old in that. Some people were just kind of stopping here and getting into the party, and there were other people that were really serious about trying to do some work. Jet was painting. Jet was seriously trying to have a studio, and there were a few other people like that here. They weren't so into the big party thing, and I wished I'd been a little more serious at that time, but I was having fun. But there was really a creative feeling here. I feel lucky now that I was part of this neighborhood at that time when it was really more of a grassroots kind of art-based community. The '87 earthquake displaced a lot of people downtown, myself included, and I ended up getting evicted by the city. They red tagged the building, and I had to go back and live with my mom for a while in Citizens Warehouse. I had a lot of friends that lived in the hotel. I spent a lot of time here in the evenings. It was a kind of a rough time here because the hotel got hit by the earthquake too, and we were all really scared downtown because we kept having these aftershocks. And I remember being here in one of the aftershocks that hit at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and you could feel the bricks rumbling kind of in the walls. Boy, Don Jones, he was kind of like a mythological figure around here. We quickly became friends, which included like trips to Trader Joe's, because I had a car and he didn't at the time, and there were no Trader Joe's except for Pasadena. Sometimes we'd get dressed up and go to have cocktails. He liked to get in costume and put on airs, and I remember it was always fun. He would take me and a couple of other girls that lived in the building in the afternoon and go to happy hours up by like the Bank District, pretending he was like some oil magnate, like we were his harem or something. He was flamboyant. He'd put on his pajamas and go into the bar at night in his pajamas and tried to pull off this Hugh Hefner kind of thing. It was just very colorful. And he told a lot of stories about traveling and going to prison for smuggling drugs in Europe. And I don't know if any of it was true or not, but he absolutely told a lot of tall tales. He was quite an enigma. Knee deep. It was like knee deep in your own whatever. It was like a little 5-minute film that I shot all around in the neighborhood, but I shot a portion of it here in the hotel. The lead actor was a bartender. Don Jones played a hobo kind of a guy in a bathrobe. Looked like he lived in a dumpster. Stevie Casual was the cameraman. Kind of everybody who kind of in the neighborhood had kind of a bit in it. It was about a guy who was pissed off at his landlord, and he turns the tub on, and the tub overflows into the floor down below. The 2 films that I made prior to that were actually better. I shot them and I edited them a little differently, but they were all shot downtown. And it was a great time to do that. I met Todd Warren in a painting class at LACC in like 1979 or 80. We hit it off right away. He was a pretty serious painter and saxophone player, which probably a lot of people down here didn't know. He had a real fascination with like John Coltrane. And I think Todd got involved in the drug scene a little heavily at that time. He was kind of an innocent kid back then. His parents were actors. He grew up in the Hollywood Hills, but he kind of had this kind of sheltered sort of life that way. So when he got down here, he just went full out. Heroin was a real scary thing down here at that time. Not many people were getting involved in that I knew of. I saw him in the Valley once at an AA type meeting that I was at, and I ran into him there, and he'd been busted and he was in some kind of county facility. And then that was the last time I saw him. And then somewhere I heard that he died, and it wasn't a nice ending. When I first moved down here in the early 80s, I pretty quickly got a job at Gorky's. That was a great place to be and work. I ended up working there for about 3 years. Yeah, and that was a whole different chapter of my life. Gorky's for me was really more about art than over here at the bar, which is more about partying and craziness. There were some serious people there at the time. Fred Tomaselli was working there, who is very successful today. When I lived in Skid Row, it was the only place that I ate because we didn't have a kitchen. I guess a lot of people in the community ate there because the food was decent. And they were open 24 hours. And there were bands and chess playing and poetry readings and all kinds of stuff going on there. There was an enclave of artists over on Temple Street in 68, 69, and 70. My stepfather had a studio on 2nd Street then, and I ran the streets of 2nd Street back then with my sister. We watched the Bonaventure Hotel get built and rode the elevators when it was closed and all this craziness. So I have a real strong connection with this area. My stepfather's second wife, Spira, was a painter, and she lived on 2nd and Beaudry. They had a house there, which is now a vacant lot. And it had a swimming pool in the back, by the way, that was filled with goldfish and was green, and all of us hippies swam in it. But right around the corner was the enclave, I guess, of the Temple Street gang, which I didn't know that's what they were known as, but I went there all the time when I was 5, 6 years old. I remember we would run around on the rooftops there, and around the corner was a photographer in one of the Victorian houses over there, Bob Harvey. The one particular place that I remember, which was kind of a warehouse storefront, I remember a skylight. and going up on the roof and running around unsupervised on the roofs. I mean, I was raised that way, my parents being artists, so I didn't really know anything else. There was a lot of freedom because as kids, running around 2nd Street, literally running across the street and playing tag at 2 a.m, there were no cops, there were no cars. I mean, it's amazing nothing happened to us, but it was just like open space and nudity. Strangely enough, I don't know if it was painting or the swimming in the pool or whatever, but it was the 60s, it was hippies. Nobody was really paying attention. When I moved here in 82, they said it was over, and then when I left in 90, everybody said it was over. I know there's still a lot of creative people down here. I know there's still a scene down here, but it just seems like a lot of that's been swallowed up. After I moved in 90, I didn't come down here for a long time. I guess when I first really noticed the changes, I came to this show at MoCA and was really amazed at all the life here at night, all the people, the lack of parking, the commercialism, the art walk on Thursday nights, Main Street completely revitalized, and I had a lot of mixed feelings, I think. I liked that the neighborhood had been revitalized, but there was a little bit of anger and sadness, like they're gentrifying this gem that we had. And some of it's good and some of it bothers me. The anger comes from all these people down here not knowing about who started it and the roots of this neighborhood. And I'm glad that it's vibrant and it's moving, but I think some of the character is gone and I'm sad about that.
Cut.